Hello and welcome back to KXAN Plus. I am your host, Esmeralda Zamora. If you're watching us live right now, happy Sunday. Thanks for joining us. With me today to continue our Weather Answers with Rich show is our KXAN meteorologist, Rich Segal. Rich, how are you doing this morning?
It's a good morning. It's the end of the weekend, and we have, again, summertime heat, which I'm not all that happy with now. We're in meteorological fall, and we kind of
Autumn.
wish that we have the fall-like temperatures because I'm just chomping at the bit to wear my sweaters.
Yeah, last summer when we did our Weather Answers with Rich, I looked back at our live cam and it was gloomy, a little bit rainy. Now it's extremely hot and it's
Yes, it
no
is.
more preview to fall. But I do too want to bring those sweaters out.
Of course, that's why we get them.
Well, we've had quite a morning, some technical issues, but we're pulling through. We have all of our graphics ready to
Yes.
go through all of the questions for
Yes,
this
thank
week.
you for helping with that.
Yeah, let's get started with it. So, our first question that we have right now was how come your pollen counts differ from the other television stations in Austin?
That's a good question, and I'm so glad that I can answer this. Not all of the TV stations here use the same pollen counters. They don't use the same allergists. Some of the stations use local allergists to get their pollen counts. So there are different reporting stations, and that's the first item. Second, the plant life is not the same within the city. There are parts of the city that have more cedar trees than others. There are parts of the city that have more ragweed plants than others. It just depends on where you are, where your sensor is, or where the count is being taken that will determine whether you have high counts or low counts of certain pollens. For example, one of the things that we have now is ragweed, and it's showing up in low numbers for us, but it's showing up in moderate numbers in other parts of the city. We're close to campus. We're at West Campus, and so we're not seeing as many of these ragweed pollens counted as they are in other parts of the city. And then I use number 3 as the example that there are more cedar trees in other parts of Austin and parts of the viewing area, not just in Austin, but you go out into the hill country. There are a lot of cedar trees up in the Georgetown area, and I mention that because there are some of the stations that used to, and I don't know if they still do because I really don't monitor that situation, but they use an allergist as we used to do from Georgetown, where there are many more cedar trees than there are here. And winds play a factor too. If the winds are strong, then we will get an influx of pollen just depending on which direction the wind comes from. And when there's no wind, we won't really see much on the slide. So this will give me an opportunity to promote our pollen sensor.
Always available.
Always available, kxan.com/allergy. And not only will you see the daily pollen counts, but you'll also see the 24-hour progression of the pollens. You'll see when the pollens spike, when we don't have much affecting the slide, because not all pollens bloom at the same time. Some bloom more in the morning, some in the afternoon. But again, the basic reason that the counts are different is because not all stations use the same equipment to detect the pollens that show up on the slide.
And this is our clouds and radar slide.
So this is number 2.
These clouds, do they have anything to do with the pollen?
No.
No?
No. But this launches into your second question.
Yes. Going back to that first one, though.
Sure.
It's important to know that we have access to our version of the pollen count on our website because you can kind of prepare for your week too and know if your child has a lot of allergies going into school, what to send them to school with. What are some other reasons why this specific this specific pollen count that we have available is important for
Well,
our
because I think the biggest reason is twofold. Number one, it allows for that 24-hour progression, but more than that, it allows us to give you a count on Saturday and Sunday. Most of the stations used to just be able to give counts on Monday to Friday, whether or not they were using another allergist, and so the allergists don't work on the weekend, and for that reason, ours takes a daily count, and it goes through the 24-hour cycle. So people need to know this. That information is not only needed Monday through Friday, but it's also needed on the weekend. And so this gives us that information that people need. There is a viewer who did write to us this morning about that, and I hope that I have answered her question. Again, where you live, whatever part of the city or whatever part of the viewing area that you live in will determine where your pollens are greatest. And, in some of the hill country communities, the cedar will be greatest. And in other parts like here and where we are, we don't have as many cedar trees downtown.
No, we don't. But we still have a lot of allergens down here for sure.
Yes, we do.
When it comes to updating that pollen count on our website, where do you normally pull your information from?
The counter is on the roof. There's a tape on the roof that collects the pollens. Artificial intelligence allows the sensor to determine what the pollens are that we're actually seeing. And now that we are in the fall season, we're starting to see a few higher counts, although it's still there in low thresholds. We're seeing a few higher counts for the fall elm and for the ragweed, which is the allergy that I suffer from more than any. And so I'm grateful for the fact that even on the weekend, I can say, well, what did ragweed count today? Why am I stuffy?
Yeah.
Or why am I sneezing a lot? And this allows us to see what's going on with the fall allergens. And usually around this time, we're still going to see mold. We're still going to see grass. We're still going to see the weeds, especially the ragweed, but also pigweed and marsh elder. And then the fall elm is the most predominant of the tree pollens. But I'll tell you, some of those summer allergens have been lasting into the fall season, and we'll get into that later on.
And is that something we can expect this fall?
Yes.
Yes. Well, our second question, moving back onto the clouds and radars, you sometimes mention the jet stream. What is it and why is it so important?
So this map would be moving if we hadn't had our issues this morning. You see that white arrow. That is the jet stream. The jet stream is a column of air aloft that separates, for our purposes, cooler versus warmer, drier versus wetter. And if you'll go to the next slide, it gives us a little more of a definition. It's a narrow band of those strong winds that are about 30,000 feet up. All right. In a jet stream, the winds essentially blow from the west to the east, but the jet stream itself moves north and south following boundaries of hot and cold air. We find the jet stream is strongest during the winter season, but the basic premise of the jet stream is it steers weather systems, for example, like thunderstorms, and in the thunderstorm season, the second of which we are about to enter, we see this is where we see the typical movement of thunderstorms and potential tornadoes and things of that nature.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but we should be expecting some storms here soon from a tropical system south of us?
No. Well, there's nothing brewing yet, but there's something in the Atlantic that may be brewing, but it's still too far off to determine where it's going to go. And we'll get into that coming up in another question.
Would something like this affect that? The
jet stream affects every weather situation that we have.
Okay.
Yeah. It kind of guides weather systems along.
And how often do we have a jet stream or something like that?
Well, the jet stream is constant.
Constant?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. That is a good question. Not one that I would have asked. Our third question is, some time ago, I heard there might be a reduction in weather balloons. First of all, what are weather balloons?
Okay, well, first let's show the picture. That is a weather balloon. There's a launch going on there. I'm not sure what part of the country it's in, but weather service personnel launch these balloons. And what they do, if we go to the next slide, is they collect essential upper air data. It is so important for us to know what is going on, not only here at the surface, but in the mid-levels and the upper levels of the atmosphere. So the balloons are launched. It takes a profile, as it says, of the vertical atmosphere, taking such things into account as the temperature at different levels of the atmosphere, the humidity, barometric pressure, and the wind direction and speed. All of this information is then relayed back to the Weather Service when the balloons pop and they start to descend to the earth. And the Weather Service is able to use this in terms of getting current weather information on their sites, and also because they want to improve the accuracy of the local weather forecast. This helps us to do that. They find that it is the most effective and the most cost-efficient way to collect all of this weather data. So the cuts that were made by Doge at the National Weather Service potentially forced the weather balloon launches to become less. But we hadn't noticed that, at least not just yet, because what we also had heard was that the government is going to be adding personnel back to the National Weather Service office. So this may inhibit a reduction in the weather balloon forecasting system.
And Rich, how many of these weather balloons do we have near us here at our KXAN station?
They launched them twice from New Braunfels. I believe one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And I know they also launched them from Texas A&M. That's our local weather services here in New Braunfels that covers the Austin, San Antonio area. So there are, at least in some areas, 2 launches per day.
And how do you collect your data from there? Do they send it your way? Is there like a website that you get on to find the information?
Well, no, they'll collect the information and then they'll derive forecasts for it, both in the short term and in the long term, to give us what they believe will be the most accurate forecast. Now, understand that we don't get the weather balloon soundings like they do. Yeah. It's their information.
And how long have these weather balloons
Couldn't
been
tell
utilized?
you. They've been around for a long time, but I don't know exactly how long.
I'm sure they've been around for a really long time. Our next question that we have, question number 4, you talk nonstop. I think there's a typo there. Nonstop about September being active for hurricanes. It's been quiet. Why?
All right, let's go to the answer here. And first of all, we have something that we very rarely see around the September season, and that is we have an area of high pressure over the Atlantic Ocean right now that is causing the air to sink, and thus it limits any tropical development. And that's part of the reason. You need warm, humid air for storms to develop. And right now, the upper atmosphere, because of that high, the upper atmosphere is dry. And so there hasn't been much that has happened since late August when we had Fernand. There is vertical wind shear right now. We have different temperature and different wind direction and speed at all levels of the atmosphere. Hurricanes and tropical storms don't like wind shear, but we have that. And so it's causing a disruption as you go up in time. And then as we go to the next graphic, we'll find, and this was no surprise to me, while central Texas is done with the Saharan dust season, you see off to the left, there is an area of low pressure, and the next graphic will show that, but I just want to stick here for a while. We continue to see that Saharan dust coming off the coast of Africa, and that limits the amount of tropical development that we'll see during a season 2. So we need to get rid of that, and then these systems will have a little more opportunity to develop. Now, if you go to the next graphic, there we see the only system in the open Atlantic right now with only a 10% chance of development in the next 2 days, but the National Hurricane Center feels there'll be a lesser amount of the Saharan dust, and the upper high in the Atlantic is expected to move away. That may allow this system to develop into the next tropical depression when the winds reach 35 miles an hour, or the next tropical storm when the winds reach 39 miles per hour. It has a 70% chance of that happening between Tuesday on to next Sunday. And if there is a named storm from this, it would be only the 7th named storm in the Atlantic. So this season is not turning out to be what was forecast by NOAA nor by the Colorado State University people.
It was supposed to be pretty active, right?
Pretty active, and so far it has not been. 70% chance of developing into the next tropical depression or tropical storm, and the storm, if that does happen when the winds reach 39 miles per hour, the storm will be named Gabrielle.
You know, we like to say that it's not, it hasn't been as active as we predicted it to be, but it's also not over. So we cannot
It's not over,
get too ahead of ourselves with that.
We are finding that the waters in the Atlantic are still quite warm, warmer than average right now. They are in the mid and upper 80s for water temperatures at the various buoys that they have out in the sea. And so the water is there, the heat is there. We just have certain limiting factors right now that are making this a very inactive season.
The heat is definitely there, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
We have an article published on our website right now on the homepage, KXAN.com, and it's titled Still Dealing with Summertime Heat in Early Autumn. This was an article you published. Tell me about it.
Last week, I wrote about how fall was being affected, but I thought, you know what? This is summertime heat. This is a little bit different. What we are finding is, according to our media partners at Climate Central, they surveyed or analyzed 246 cities to determine that 92% of U.S. major cities are finding that summer heat is beginning while the late spring season is ongoing and about to wrap up, and B, that this summertime heat is lasting into the start of fall. Now, please understand that the fall that they're using is the meteorological fall.
Which
We've explained this
in,
before.
right?
We have been in meteorological fall now for 2 weeks. We are still finding temperatures like we saw yesterday. And, well, let's go to Friday. Friday, we had a high of 98, 6 above normal. Yesterday, we had a high of 97, 5 above normal. I'm forecasting a high of 97 today, 5 above normal. And if you scroll down, well, if you'll stop there, you see that Austin, the reporting station in Austin, has had 23 days where the temperature has been 95 or higher, lasting into the fall season. And they feel that as climate change continues, the folks at Climate Central kind of feel like with all the research that they are doing, that number may grow in time. Now, this goes back to the 1970s when we had more cooler starts to the fall than what we're seeing right now. But if you'll scroll down a little bit more to that orange graphic where it says longer summers right there, thank you, you see the arrows in either direction pointing to summer heat starting in late spring, summer heat continuing into fall, and the winters are shorter as a result. And we have noticed that too, especially here. We don't have much of a winter season here.
And it's our winter season is like probably a month and a half or 2 months.
Sometimes
to me.
I tell people it's a week.
If you can like wear shorts and a sweater and still be fine.
Yes, and
that's Texas for you.
And one of the things too, you know, this is you see, heat-related illnesses are a possibility because we still have people that work outdoors in this heat. You know, they should be dealing with cooler temperatures now, but look at the very bottom. I couldn't help but put this, and we are finding that we are seeing more sweat-er weather as opposed to sweater weather. And I was telling Jada this morning when we were talking about the article, and I said, you know, I'm really so looking forward to wearing the sweaters that I purchased and got for Hanukkah last year. But I haven't been able to break them out. I've only been able to wear a sweater one time, and I can't remember the reason for it. I think it was because I had all my shirts at the dry cleaner.
Well, this past week, we had a pretty cold, chilly morning. So
yes, we did.
Throw the sweater
on. They were
on
really
and
nice.
take it off in the afternoon.
I wore a hoodie then.
Yeah, well, for all of our viewers who are interested in sending you some questions for Weather Answers with Rich, where can they do that?
It's easy. You can send it to me. At the very bottom, it says report it, REPORTIT at KXAN.com. And we'll be answering your questions every Sunday.
Yes, every Sunday. And again, if you're watching us live here on our socials, our website, or our mobile app, thank you so much for joining us. But we are also available.
Let me see if I can get this right.
You want me to test it?
Apple TV, Roku, Safari.
No.
Not Safari.
Close.
I'll let you. I can't remember the one that starts. It starts with an S, right? I can't remember.
Samsung.
And then there's a fourth one.
It's Samsung, Fire TV, Roku, and Apple TV.
Yeah.
There's 4. So those were available on those app stores wherever you get your streams, completely for free, KXAN Plus. And you can rewatch Weather Answers with Rich or our previous ones, as well as much more exclusive content that we offer on that site. Thank you for joining me, Rich, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.